Hey everyone, so it's time for the second part of the video from yesterday where, of course, I said I was kind of frustrated at the end and tired and thought there's no point in just making you watch me debug a computer for 30 minutes. So I went and did it myself, and with ChatGPT's help, I located the source of the problem, and it was actually something that I knew before and reinforces my point about I should write these things down and have these processes written down somewhere in the n8n forum. There's not a huge amount of information about installing stuff with npm because a lot of people use it with Docker, but there was just one forum post which you can look up, or maybe I'll post a link in the YouTube video. In the n8n community forum, it's called installing additional module with npm, and it reminds you that you have to do you have to export an environment variable where n8n is going to run. So, if I had installed n8n globally, so I was able to export this, install MQTT globally was the correct way to do it. And that was why I was having problems with my online server, because the n8n that I was using in the Digital Bricks domain name was one that is a kind of container of the main Linux implementation. So you get this kind of little node container that you can run node modules in, and that doesn't allow you to install stuff globally. So I was right to go in through DigitalOcean and to install MQTT globally because I was on a sub-user, so I needed to have it globally installed for that sub-user to have access to it. But I don't know that there was a way to really do it in a way that n8n would recognize, but it might have done if I had done this part, so I don't know. And I can't get. I had to terminate and reboot my entire server for EC2 because it was completely. It just completely went down. It wouldn't start up anymore. I think there was something because I kind of killed it in the middle of installing something. It probably meant that there's some sort of system corruption and that it didn't want to start anymore. I couldn't SSH into it, so I had to do instance terminate, which wipes everything, and then start a new one. Basically, just wipe it and start a new server, and that worked okay. But in the end, I used my local n8n, and actually, it's probably the best. Like I said before, it's always the best if you use your local n8n to do this kind of stuff, to do these kind of things. And it's not that big a deal whether it's local or online because we're using an external MQTT service. This service is handling the fact that it's WSS, the fact that it's secure. I don't really need to worry about where the call is coming from to the MQTT server, so it doesn't really matter where I show you that it's running from. But yeah, so this export thing, it's also something I had to do on my local machine. I'm assuming you would have to do it on a Windows machine as well, I hope, but I don't know. It basically tells n8n you're allowed to use this node service that's installed called MQTT. So just put that into your terminal, and that should work. And if it doesn't work, the other thing that worked for me was doing it like this. The second post. No, it wasn't that. It was. Was it ChatGPT that helped me in the end? Yeah, it was this one. So we can start n8n with an explicit environment variable. So that was just like without the export, just using node function allow external MQTT equals, and then n8n separately that does both the environment variable and starting n8n explicitly with that variable. So that worked, but that's not probably a good solution for the long term, because if you use other npm modules with your n8n, you're going to need to do this for each one of them. It needs to add this line to the environment variables for each one, and ideally you would want to do, maybe you actually want to go into the bash profile file, which ChatGPT can help you do, and actually install them with I think they add commas or something when you have multiple ones. Can't remember. This post is pretty interesting, so it's worth reading through. But maybe you can add several different modules at the same time. You have to add each module there individually, so that's something that you would need to do. So it's just, if you're having the same problem I had, that's probably where you're going to find your fixes within this concept of the environment variable for node function allow external. There you go. And that means that now it's going to run. When I run this, I think, where was it that I was going to run it? It was active a second ago. Yeah, to activate that. I think this one did run. We're going to do a test run. No, we're going to do we're going to do a test run first. Make sure it works. That's why I didn't activate it. We're going to do a test run first. So we've got our webhook endpoint, which is now the local host. So I can use localhost in my local Noodle. So we're going to send a call to localhost, cheat a little bit. We're going to execute workflow that's going to listen for the webhook and then do all the steps and show us that it works. So when we click get that cat GIF, there's a cat GIF. So the MQTT topic received a URL. And if we look here, oh, couldn't return a single object. An array of objects was returned. Oh yeah, I forgot about that. Run once for all items I had to put last time. Save that. Run that again. The new cat GIF has arrived. And there we go. One item has been produced. Message sent. So that's what we asked it to send to resolve the promise of, it's received a response from the MQTT. The message went through okay, and so it outputs a JSON to the next step with just result as message sent. So it means that we get something out, and we could theoretically return that with the API as a result, because otherwise the webhook is just going to return response. So since I have a little bit of time, I can show you that. First incoming item, result message sent. So we can just send that the way it is. It's already a very nicely structured JSON. So we'll send that, and we'll say that you're going to respond at the response to webhook node. Could have also said when last node finishes. We don't actually have to do a response to webhook node because we've only got one item and we don't need to parse it or do anything funny. But I just like having the response for some reason. It makes me feel safer. So execute that again, and then this time we should see an output as well. Or not. Oh, it did. So it had its thing, it sent a request. Maybe I should put in something about the response there. If response okay, throw new error, output success, outputs response. Maybe. I just want to see it. Let's do that again. No, it really doesn't want to send anything back. Okay, we're fine. Okay, why not? Verify the webhook node's response parameter is set. First incoming item. Properties response code 200. Maybe that'll help. Oops. No. Still getting the cat gifts, but just not giving me a response. Probably because this is not response okay. It should output response. Anyway, a problem for another time. We're not going to start debugging that again, but that's theoretically what should happen, and what we should be doing is either the response or, well, we can try the first item thing and see what that does. Try saying respond with first item. Respond with last node. Response goes 200 first entry JSON. It might have been because I actually didn't put the JSON in the response. Oops. Let's think about that in a second. No, still nothing. Oh, maybe there's a specific way to pull the response out. Just a quick question to ChatGPT. Why would this code not output the response from n8n? A few reasons, oh dear. Fetch is natively available, so that's not the problem. The endpoint is accessible, so it's fine. No. The workflow is running. The response is being sent from n8n. It's just not outputting in Noodle. Back the output data. In your script, you're setting object response, but not actually assigning anything to it. Thank you, ChatGPT. I'm not gonna say stupid. I'm silly. This morning I'm tired. It is only 9:30 in the morning. I'm tired. Is that a good excuse? Yeah, that's a good excuse. That's very good. So we'll test that again. Well, and you know what we can do actually now, instead of just testing it all the time, we can just activate it. And what we'll do when we've activated it is we need to change over to the production URL. So we're going to change that. I think it's just the difference is just webhook test, isn't it? Yeah, just not webhook test, but webhook. Not webhook tests, but just webhook. And I mean, I could also do a kind of state, for example, state node that has the webhook test address and the webhook address, and then use a switch node to switch in between them for when I want to test and when I want to make it live, just for the editor and just to facilitate my life. Be nice. So now we go over to executions, so we can actually see what's happening if we need to. Test that, and then we've got a response, and the response is an empty JSON. That's okay. Go back to the editor. We're going to add a webhook response. First incoming item, response code 200, and put response in fields. Yeah, like that. Does that work? Something like that. Save that and see what happens in the executions. Yeah. Get that cat gif. Oh. That's not doing anything. It's running. What happened? Why is it still running? What did it change? The production URL? Okay, let's go back to the tests one. That was a bit of a bit premature thinking everything's working. It's not really, but that's okay. Oh yeah, of course. I didn't change it over to when last node finishes to using response to webhook node. Whoops. Sorry. Let's test it. Just a minute. Let's test it because I'm getting really too excited there. Oh, it's not sending the MQTT message. That's funny. That's the bit that's blocking. Let's have a look at this. Could not connect to instance. Oh, I wonder. Instance is recharging. Oh, okay. There we go. So it's just that I used up my available time, and so it'll take 43 minutes for it to recharge. Anyway, that's fine. I think you've got the idea. We did it. We were getting a response out. It's just that I had to put it correctly in the code. You know, it's just a simple beginner coder mistake. Sorry about that. So that's all good. And yeah, I think that was all we wanted to show today, wasn't it? Yeah, so it all works. You could then keep using Shifter, or you can shift over to using, like I was saying yesterday, Mosquito. Has a very good guide on how to set it up. So the package installation for Linux, something, there we go. Mosquito. Not that good documentation. Running the Mosquito broker. Yeah, configuration. Yeah, it's important to look at all this, not all of this, sorry, but it's important to give this link to ChatGPT because it is a little bit tricky to set up GitHub repository. That's probably where the best place you could go is. Yeah, there we go. Quick start, documentation. So you got the manual. Jeez. Yeah. So best thing maybe just to ask ChatGPT to help you set it up, because it's a simple lightweight service you can run in an EC2 server, for example, that I'm doing for LearnBook. The tricky part was setting up the SSL, so getting it to be a WSS WebSocket and not WS, so a secure socket, to be able to use that in your deployed version of Noodle, which is HTTPS, and so you need to have WSS. That I used, what was it called? Certificates. No, it was Let's Encrypt. Let's Encrypt. I got the guide from Let's Encrypt on how to run from shell certbot using certbot, and I think I just asked ChatGPT to guide me through that as well. So installing certbot and then getting it to pump out an SSL certificate, putting that into the folder where Mosquito is, referencing it in the Mosquito configuration file as key and whatever it was, and then using that in using that in the service, in the Mosquito service, meant that I could install that certificate in Certificate Manager, I think, or something like that. I can't remember exactly what it was. I'll have to do maybe a video about it, but it means that you can use Mosquito. It's free, open source, and you don't have to pay for Shifter, but you have to keep it running yourself. So, it's always that caveat that you have to keep the thing running yourself, so it doesn't do this and go down and make you wonder where the bugs are coming from. But yeah, so we got it working anyway. That's a button that retrieves live data. Now that could be data from anywhere. It could be from your external backend that n8n is communicating with, and updating everybody who's currently watching this page. It's the challenge is to get a unique ID for the people who are watching, to put them in a sort of group. So for LearnBook, it was easy because learners and teachers are looking at a lesson. They must be looking at a lesson to see messages. And so whatever lesson they're looking at, all I have to do is send a message to everybody who's currently connected to that lesson object ID. So it was an easy way to solve that, to solve that problem of having who should be updated. How do I make a unique ID for the topic to get everyone updated? Was pretty easy for LearnBook. And for your app, it might be as easy, or you might need to think in terms of, okay, it's Airbnb, and so I need it to be the unique ID of anybody who's looking at that particular listing. Or you want the search page to be updatable, well then maybe I need to make a unique ID for the search page, like search page topic or something like that. And then anybody who's subscribed to the search page topic would get an update from, listings that have been updated or something like that. Or at least we get an update of the object that's been updated, like one of the listings had its name changed. I'm currently looking at the listing page. Maybe Noodle says, okay, can you find anything in the array of the 10 listings this person's currently looking at? Can you find the object ID that's just come in? No, you can't find it. Okay, well then it doesn't need to be updated. And they'll click a next button and they'll see another 10 listings, and it'll be in there, but it'll be refreshed probably. So that'll be okay. Or yes, it is in those 10 listings they're looking at. So update the object to retrieve the record that they're talking about here in the MQTT message, and update our local array object to reflect what the record now says, like the new title that it has or something like that. So that could be done just because everybody's looking at the search page. Everybody can receive an MQTT message. They're very lightweight. It's no big deal. And then everybody would have that updated who's currently looking at that listing search. The question is how far can you go with MQTT? I don't exactly know. With an EC2 T2 micro server, what would you estimate would be the maximum number of concurrent MQTT connections using Mosquito? It's a bit challenging, yes, I know, but let's try to get a ballpark figure, please. Yeah, so MQTT is a lightweight protocol. Doesn't require a lot of processing, that's good. Yeah, I guess it's not as it's like a WebSocket still, so it is still a WebSocket connection, but I guess it's not really sending that much data. Assuming each connection consumes a small amount of data, 10K per connection, with 1 gig could theoretically handle 100,000 connections. This doesn't account for memory needed, considering both CPU and memory. Quality of service, network bandwidth. Yeah, I don't want a precise estimation. So, okay, it's a lot, potentially. There are no limits in terms of how many WebSocket connections Linux or EC2 can handle. It's just a question of memory and resources. Practical terms, the number of WebSockets the Linux system can handle is indeed primarily contained by available system resources. There are also other factors. File descriptors. Linux systems has a default limit on the number of file descriptors can be open at one time. This limit can be viewed, blah, blah, blah. Okay, so it sounds like there are limits that can be dealt with, I guess. Which in the end, like when I was talking about Bubble before and WebSocket connections in Bubble, in the other video I did about n8n, oh no, about MQTT, it might have been actually that they're using an MQTT broker. Maybe they're not using direct WebSockets into the database. Maybe they are using an MQTT broker and they just subscribe people to certain, views or whatever, like I was just describing with the listing search. So that's okay. That's good news. Something to think about. It's worth testing, and I would probably talk to a development expert, a coder or somebody, a network engineer, and ask them, okay, I'm looking at building an app. It's going to rely very heavily on MQTT to update data. Am I going to get, if I get 100,000 users, am I going to get in trouble in terms of the amount of resources required, or, what would be required in terms of a server? But it looks like it's just a case of scaling, just scaling the architecture, making something that has, an AWS EC2 that has better resources. It looks like that could potentially be the solution. So yeah, MQTT, good solution for live data, in my opinion. Start getting familiar with this whole send message, receive message thing. I even started building components for send message that would like store in the database a log of when the message wasn't sent successfully. Like if, for example, the message is sent but nothing is received, then I would log something in the database saying message not received. So I would start to build up information about that. So I think you could, you could definitely build your own sort of MQTT system if your app relied heavily on that for Noodle. You always have that possibility of building your own prefab, not just, staying with what Noodle gives you, but, producing something of your own with that. So something that's worth investigating. But I do think it's really worth considering in terms of a serious solution for live data in the app that's better than things like WebSockets with the Supabase that are limited to a certain number and stuff like that. You can see how there's an advantage here. So I hope that was useful, and I hope you didn't waste too much time with the last video watching me struggle